My dream project to build an aeroplane engine car just like that.
But I know next to nothing about this era of car. I have found another Liberty engine. If it falls off here, I think it's over. This steel beam is to span the gap where the roller shutter is going in this front wall.
We've made an already precarious situation even more dangerous.
If this turns out to have a high lead content, we'll have to think of plan B. This morning really is quite a decider. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Thank you so much for joining us again. And I'm very pleased to say we are back in the workshop working on car stuff. I'm so excited to be able to say that. As you can probably see behind me, there's been a lot of progress with the workshop. And you know what I'm going to say? You're going to have to wait for the TV show, UK TV, to see a lot of that stuff. But I'm still very much working in chaos. The TV show is coming to an end, which means I've got a tiny bit more time to spend here working on my own projects and actually getting stuck into stuff. Yes, I have got a pile of old crystal windows outside that all need new glazing, new putties, frames making, and windows installed into the side of the building before the winter. I've got the gable end there, half built, no roller shutter, no windows, gaps everywhere, holes in the roof, leaking roof panels, but I'm going to ignore all of that and work on the Edwardian, mainly because there's been a bit of a discovery. I have found another Liberty engine. I've managed to track down another bottom end, the whole case, crank, rods, and it's been sitting on the side or on its stand over there for far too long. I'm desperate to get it taken apart, stripped down, so I can then look at getting it blasted and cleaned, inspected, before we get the angle grinders out and cut it in half and turn it into a V8. The engine has been marinized again, so it's been converted for marine use, and part of that conversion meant it's got this contraption on the end of the crank which may be quite helpful. That looks to me like a planetary gear set, and it's basically can be used to increase the gearing or the RPM essentially of the engine, because a big issue with these aeroplane engines is they've got huge amounts of torque, massive displacement, very low revving. That's not good for a gearbox or a rear end, because way too much torque, not enough revs. So it will top out at like 40 miles an hour, and actually I need it to top out at 100 miles an hour. So somehow you need to increase the gearing. I will admit it does add another layer of complexity to the drivetrain, which I'm not thrilled about, but I'm also trying not to explode a gearbox and make an entirely new rear end. So that's why I'm very keen to get this apart and try and get that off the crank to see what condition it's in, to see if it actually could be quite useful, as well as obviously the case halves. We've got two to choose from, and actually each one is missing different bits, so I think we're in a good spot. I have got one other slight issue though. I've now got a beautiful flat floor in the workshop, in this lower end of the workshop, which is amazing. It's not sealed yet because there's still no wall, so the rain still comes in and it still gets wet. That's why I've not brought any of my tools and machines down yet, because it's very much still open to the elements. But I'm gonna bring the engine, which is up the top end of the workshop up there, bring that down. Trouble is, I've now got a bit of a cliff where the new floor level meets up to the old floor. There's gonna be a wall built there eventually, but for now I've just got a bit of a muddy cliff. So before we get stuck into the engine, I can get the forklift round and try and somehow get my precious new engine down that cliff. This is going to be precarious. I could try and sort of lump it down, step it down the first bit, top drop it down, try and get the back down and sort of jiggle it down. I feel like that could go wrong. The case is thin, very thin cast aluminium. It's very fragile. If it falls off here, I think it's over. So I just need to be very careful. The best plan is to get the forklift, ram the forklift up to this bottom step, and then just try and sneak and roll it and slide it onto the forks. But anyway, let's see. Let's get the forklift fired up, offer it up, and see what happens. This summer has been so busy. I have not stopped working, but I'm so glad to be back in the workshop and able to start working on some of my projects here. There is, however, somebody else that has been working harder than me. Data brokers, constantly buying and selling your personal information, financial, health information, birthdays, addresses, anything they can get their hands on is up for grabs. However, also working tirelessly are today's sponsor, Incogni. Recent cyber attacks include Jaguar Land Rover, Heathrow Airport, even the NHS, and they were affected by a breach at a third-party supplier selling wheelchairs. The criminals really won't stop at anything. To keep your data safe, you can request that it's removed, but who's got time for that? You would be constantly submitting requests hundreds and hundreds of times, and as fast as you can submit the requests, your information will be back with the brokers. You can maximise your online privacy with their new custom removals feature. If you do find a website with your private information on it, you can copy that exact link, send it to Incogni Custom Removals, and they will go through the process of getting that removed for you. Incogni are the first and only personal data removal service to be verified by Deloitte. That means they actually do remove your data, not just say that they're doing it. It is really easy to sign up to Incogni, and they are offering viewers of this channel a huge 60% discount, which is very generous. Not only are you helping to support this channel by signing up, you're also saving money. Use code Chinea at the checkout or go to incogni.com/Chinea and get a huge 60% off your annual plan. Okay, let's try and get hold of this thing. That's not going to work. I'm going to try and spin the engine round so the flywheel is at the back. That might give me a bit more clearance. It's not going to work like this though.
Trying to do even straightforward things like this in this workshop, the way it is at the moment, is so difficult. Don't forget, the whole workshop floor is sloping on a big old hill down towards the big drop. It's a heavy old engine and I'm on my own, and just trying to spin it around like this, things could have gone very wrong. But luckily they didn't. I span it round so the flywheel is clear and up the other side, but it was right about here when I realised, yep, that forks aren't long enough. That's not going to work either. So back off again, another struggle to get it up. Turn it 90 degrees was my only option, which I didn't want to do because I'm going to have to lower the forks down right to the very bottom of the engine stand, making things a little bit unstable. But it really is my last option. So with a bit more of a wiggle, a bit more of a push, gently, just lowering the forks down just so it can slide on, using the hill to my advantage this time. But still, the forks weren't quite long enough. The wheels on the trolley were going to fall off the edge of the floor before the forks would actually reach under the far side of the stand. This is turning into a bit of a nightmare. I'm gently, gradually lowering the forklift forks, and as I'm lowering it, the gravity is pulling the engine and letting it slide onto the forks a little bit more. But as it's sliding onto the forks more and more, that front wheel is getting closer and closer to the edge. That is terrifying. This forklift has done me so well. I'm absolutely chuffed with it, but it's got this weird issue that every now and then the starter motor just won't engage. I don't know if it's a weird spot on the engine's rotation or bit on the flywheel, but it just needs barring over and cranking around a little bit more, and then it fires up. Who knows what's going on with that. There we go. Now the forklift is running. Finally, we have liftoff. Now it's just a case of very, very carefully lifting the engine on the stand, reversing back ever so slowly until I'm clear of the cliffy rock bit, and then lowering it down gently on to the new nice flat workshop floor. Oh, thank goodness for that. Now we can all breathe. It's down. Panic over. Let's get rid of the forklift and start taking this engine apart. For anybody new to the channel that hasn't been watching for a while, this is a Liberty V12 engine made around 1916-17 for the First World War to go into an aircraft. This one in particular has been converted after the war for marine use, and that's why it's got this strange looking flywheel slash planetary gear set on the front.
So you can see there very slightly, this would be the output to the gearbox. You can see how much quicker that's turning than this outside. If you use one of these bolts as your reference, so from one revolution of this outer gear will be 2 or more revolutions of the actual output. I don't know. I'm assuming there's 3 gears missing. If anybody can shed any light on this, please let me know what we're working with here. Don't know. I can't wait to see what's inside. The last thing I want to happen are for any of these nuts and bolts to snap. So good old WD-40 penetrant is going to help me along the way. It's not an ad. I just need all the help I can get.
Taking apart old things like this is always so exciting. These moments like this, undoing this ring of nuts, who knows what is behind them. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to find. I really don't. And you also never know what you're going to come up against. If one of these nuts or studs sticking out shears off and snaps off, I could be in a whole world of problems. But luckily, as you can see, they're all coming undone really nicely, which is quite incredible because this engine has quite clearly sat outside for a large number of years. It's been sitting outside uncovered. The crankcase is full of leaves and it's covered in surface rust. It is really not in very good condition at all. But that's why I think it's the perfect candidate for me to cut down and make into a V8. That is another story. If you haven't seen that debate, we'll talk about that a bit later on. But yes, this engine is going to be cut in half, 4 cylinders removed and welded back together to make it into a V8. I am being as careful as I can be, quite clearly, and this is a big moment, the first piece of this new engine actually coming off, and quite successfully. You can see inside they are essentially the sort of planet gears that link the outer gear to the inside, to the output, to the drive shaft. It's really interesting and amazing how nice a condition all of this stuff is inside. It's looking good.
That is one big nut. I think this nut has to come off to get that crown gear off, and then that can come off, I think. This is incredibly frustrating. That nut on the end there of that gear that's holding that on is 65 millimeters, and I definitely do not have anything anywhere near as big as that. So I've been pondering over for the last half hour or so, do I try and make something? Yes, I probably could fashion something together, use the extreme plasma table to cut something out and work with that, but chances are that nut is going to be very tight, so I'd rather not damage it and try and do it with the proper socket. Turns out transit van hub nuts are 65mm, so 65mm sockets do exist. Yes, I appreciate this may be Imperial, it might be a slightly different size, but I've measured it with my calipers and it's just over 65mm, so I might need to modify the socket a little bit. But I've ordered one. It's going to be here in a couple of days. I actually also don't have a proper sort of mechanics like impact gun, a big one. I'd always used to borrow John's, but sadly John is now too far away, so I'm stuck. I have to wait a couple of days for that, which is incredibly frustrating. But one thing I can do, I can start taking the actual case apart. I probably shouldn't. I should really wait to get this off the end of the crank before I start taking the case halves apart, but I'm incredibly impatient. And whilst I'm here with my spanners and an afternoon free, I'm going to start to loosen all of the rusty nuts and bolts, because if you watched the last video where I took the other Liberty engine apart, it took a long time. There's a lot of nuts and bolts, a lot of bolts holding it together. They're all rusty, they're all corroded. These are probably even worse than the other one. There's 50 of those nuts and bolts, the little nuts and bolts running all around the edge of the case. I think their main job, I mean, obviously it's holding the two case halves together, but there's big studs actually doing that as well. I think these are also to sort of seal the edge lip up where the two meet. So they're sort of every inch and a half maybe, all the way around, 50 of them. All of them rusty, corroded. None of them snapped, but they're all very corroded. The heads aren't really hexagonal anymore. Access is quite tricky in between the webs. What a nightmare, but that's enough excuses. They were a pain, they're all out. Next thing to tackle is the main studs that run all the way down the center of the case. Big studs running through from the bottom to the top, holding the main bearing shells together, the whole case halves together. Split pins, more rusted off, rounded nuts, but we're gonna get there.
And this is right about where my enthusiasm and positivity ran out. That was seriously tight, and you know when you just get that feeling that things are going to snap? I really don't want to snap this stud in the engine, so I'm just warming it up with the blowtorch just to try and expand the nut and loosen it off. There it goes. That was brilliant. That's one freed up. I just need to do the same again to all of the rest of them. And there's a lot. But as the saying goes, slow and steady wins the race. I just need to very calmly work my way through, removing the split pin, then try and warm up the nut to not cause any damage and force anything in the engine case. Heat it up with the oxyacetylene, then try and break it free with the ratchet and the socket, work my way down from the front of the engine all the way down to the back. This took hours.
Hello everyone, it's a new day. It's already lunchtime. I don't know what has happened. The time has absolutely flown by. Yesterday came to an early finish because I quickly realised I did not have the right tools for the job. Trying to get these case studs off is an absolute pain. Heating them up, I know it's not a good thing to be doing, but I'm trying my best to not damage the case. I have been shopping. I'm pleased to say I've got some more tools. Look, I have splashed out and bought myself a big 1/2-inch impact gun, which is very exciting. First time I have ever owned one of these. I've always just borrowed John's, so now I've got my own. It's 1/2-inch, but then that's led me to realise I don't have any Imperial impact 1/2-inch sized sockets. So I had to go to Halfords and get some adapters to step down to use my normal sockets, which again, I know is not ideal. I thought I had toolboxes full of tools here, but I have, but not quite the right ones. Getting this engine apart is proving to be quite expensive. Also, look what's turned up. The world's biggest socket. This is a 65mm socket for the nut on the end of the crank that's holding the planetary gears on. It is absolutely huge. This is a socket I'm probably going to use once in my entire life, but now I've got it. May well end up just being a nice paperweight. But this 65mm socket has a 1-inch drive, which I have nothing that size. The new impact is 1/2-inch, which means I've also had to order a 1/2-inch to 1-inch adapter to actually be able to use this. So frustratingly, the socket is here. It fits on the nut on the end of the crank perfectly, which is amazing, but I can't use it because I haven't got anything that is 1-inch drive. So I've ordered the adapter. That's not going to be here for a couple of days. Getting that planetary gear set off the front is going to have to wait, but at least I've got the impact so I can try and get off some more of these studs from the top of the case. I can progress. I have just been out getting a haircut. It's very subtle, but hey, bit of a tidy up. What do you reckon? Beard trim, it's looking good. Whilst I was away, look what has turned up. The biggest beam I've ever seen. It is absolutely ginormous. This steel beam is to span the gap where the roller shutter is going in this front wall. It's a big opening, 4.5 meters, just over 4.5 meters wide. The beam is 5.5 meters wide, and I think it's 302 or 305, like 300 mil roughly square. It's big, way overkill for what I need for that span with hardly any weight above it, but you may notice there's some holes drilled down the middle of it. There's a plan. It's going to happen much later down the line, but the idea was that this big fat wide beam is that I can have a roller shutter on the inside and some sliding doors, nice old wooden clad, you know, you can picture them now, can't you? Flaky paint, bit of sign writing, open rolling sliding doors on the outside. They will be hung from this beam. So I'm sort of thinking ahead. I have quite a clear image now of what this place is going to look like. Knowing that I'm going to end up hanging nearly 1/2 ton's worth of doors off the front, I've overdone it on the beam so I can fix everything to that. Makes sense to me anyway. Probably nobody else, I don't know. I'm certainly not a structural engineer, but luckily I've had other people do that for me. So that's all good. But I've got the problem now of trying to get it in the workshop. But before then, whilst it's outside, I'm going to paint it. I'm going to paint it black. It's already primed, but I want to paint it just to try and protect it, really. Stop it going rusty like everything else is down here in front of my eyes. Spike has got a few more courses to go. He's nearly there. One side is up to height. The other side, I think, is two and a bit courses away. So he's very, very close before we can put this beam up. As soon as the beam is up, I can start thinking about roller shutters. So anybody out there, supplies, makes, fits, roller shutters, get in touch. Leave me a comment, drop me an email, because I'm in need of one. 4.5 meters square, roughly. Let me know. That'll be very helpful.
It's my idea.
That was your fault. Yeah, it's on camera.
I'm the bright spot. If we come at this angle at this,
Yeah.
so it's on an angle on the forklift, when we drive in this way, we want to be able to favour that end in. Because if we get in here, then we'll be able to move the length through this opening. I'm thinking.
That is Spike. He is a very talented stonemason and he's done all of the block work for the building so far. It's coming on really well. Now the beam is painted and dry, it's time to try and get it in the workshop, which is what we were trying to talk about doing. But the problem is, the beam is wider than the actual opening into the workshop. So we're having to come at it from an angle and maneuver it round. It was a struggle. This is really, really exciting. If I'm able to get this beam into the workshop somehow, get it into position, Spike is almost ready to go to actually put this beam into position up onto the wall, which it's always nice. Even the window apertures, when we complete those and put the lintel in place on top, it just finishes off the aperture. It makes everything look so much more finished. And this means I'm so close to finishing this gable end, then I can start looking at getting a roller shutter, putting the windows in. Things will start to become watertight very, very quickly. So getting this beam here on site and actually up onto the wall is such a huge day. And it's in. Look at that. Spike's plan worked an absolute treat. It's on its pallet in position right in front of the wall, ready to go. Just waiting for Spike to put the last few blocks on the wall. Hopefully he won't be long. Then we can try and lift this beam up in place. To be continued.
Good morning, everyone. It's a new day. Another few days have gone past and I still haven't got the engine apart, and I'm actually not going to be able to work on the engine today because the camera crew are here for the last day of filming for the TV show, UK TV, Dom's Cornish Workshop. It's going to have to wait till the weekend, but that's okay. You will only have to wait a couple of minutes. This morning I've got a slight distraction that the beam that I was painting is going in. Spike is here first thing, and before the cameras will turn up, I'm going to try and get this mega beam installed, lifted up onto the wall. Well, the beam weighs over half a ton and it's 4.6 meters up, and my forklift won't go that high. So what we're about to do is slightly precarious. It should be safe, it should be okay. Put the beam on a pile of blocks to give us an extra meter to be able to lift it up and get it up on the wall. Spike.
Hello, mate.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Yeah, great. You?
Yeah, very good. How's it all gone?
Yeah, well, we're ready.
We're ready. Are you ready for the morning?
Yeah.
Slightly terrifying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most days.
Yeah, like most things. Yeah, fair, like most days here, yeah. At least it's a nice clear morning.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. Okay, I'll get the keys to the forklift.
We realised we had to move the beam to the very front of the pile of blocks. That's because the pallet and the pile of blocks were going to hit the scaffolding and not allow us to get the beam where we needed to. So we've made an already precarious situation even more dangerous. This is not ideal, but I promise we were careful. Okay, this is it. It's a beautiful, clear morning. The sun is shining. The beam is on the pallet, ready to go. Spike is up on the scaffolding with his spirit level. This is it. We'll be as careful as we can, but let's lift this beam into position. As over half a ton of steel beam was getting higher and higher and higher above my head, things were getting more and more tense, but we were also edging closer and closer to getting it in position, which is so exciting. Yes, I also had the drone flying in the air whilst all of this was going on. It was a busy morning, but it was creeping forwards closer and closer to getting to position until touchdown. It's there, it's home, and it's safe. Absolutely brilliant. I am so chuffed. It's gone so well. Now I can lower the forklift, get that out the way, leave the rest of the work to Spike. He's going to bolt that and fix that in position, and now he can carry on with the rest of the block work up to the top. And we can get on with that engine. Let's get to it.
All right, hello everyone. Another day has gone. It's now Saturday, it's the end of the week. I've had the engine in a situation where all of the studs are off, all of the sort of circumference of the smaller nuts and bolts are removed. The two case halves are loose, they're literally separate. You can see a little gap around the edge where they're actually starting to separate. I've not been able to take off the top half of the case because I've still got that planetary gear set and that big flywheel hanging off the end of the crank, and I need to get that removed first. And this took ages to turn up, so this has been the hold up, but it's just turned up. I've ripped it out of its packaging, run down to the workshop, because now I can finally see if that 65mm nut will come off. Oh my God. And then hopefully the gear inside will come off, reveal some nuts and bolts. Well, who knows what it's going to reveal behind it, but fingers crossed it's not too tight and I can actually undo it. That has moved. It's off. There we go, just like that, hundreds of pounds later, or loads of new tools, and in seconds, that huge nut was removed. It was tight, it did take a bit of a go, but it's off. Right, is it just gonna slide apart now, or are we gonna have another fight? Let's find out, I guess. I know that the end of the crank that this is all fitted onto is, it's got a key on it and it's tapered because I've already taken the previous engine apart, so I know what the end of the crank looks like. That means it's going to be hard to remove because it's pressed onto the taper with that big nut, so that's pushed it all on. And you can see inside there's a sort of multiple splined part with one bigger bit. I think that bigger bit is the key on the crank, which means this whole section, including the flywheel and this gear that's wobbling around, is all just needs to slide off in one, off the crank, which I can't do. I don't want to start hitting it, I don't want to start damaging it, so I'm actually going back on myself now and thinking maybe I do take the case halves off, get all the rods and everything precious out the way, then I can try and put the crank and this big flywheel in a press and press it off.
Right, it is forklift time again. This, I mean, even the top half of this engine case is so big, it's just far too heavy for me to try and lift off on my own. And because of the studs that are going from the bottom part of the engine all the way through the top and coming out the top, it has to be lifted off really nice and straight to stop it from binding up. So this took a long time. I've cut this down an awful lot, but I'm just sneaking it up with the forklift, and then every now and then walking around and just making sure nothing's binding up and sticking. Just doing another lap, making sure it's all okay, sneaking it up with the forklift, just raising it up. I've got the strap going through one of the webs on the main bearings, so it's nice and strong. It's in the middle. Weight balance is somewhere near the middle, I kind of guess, to be fair. But again, just very carefully working my way around, up with the forklift, and then just wiggling it up off of the actual main engine studs until at the very end it just gave up and it freed off, and I could lift it up and out the way and have a good look at the crank and all of these rods and all the other goodies that are inside this engine. That's what I want to see.
Yep, that was as tense as it probably looked on camera. Trying to do that on my own was precarious. Just last time I had a couple of builders here, Spike I think and Callum helped me. Doing that on my own, not ideal. It is a big engine, and even the top half of it is just so long. But I guess not for long. We're about to cut it in half, so it won't be this big for much longer. Right, now we can actually see the crank and the rods and all the internals of the engine. It's fascinating having a look at it. This hasn't been open for a long time.
I need to be extremely careful with all of these parts, because these rods, these nuts and bolts, the bearings, the end caps, I need to use all of them again when we rebuild this engine. As I said earlier, I am planning to cut this engine in half and turn it into a V8, removing 4 cylinders to make it into a V8. Liberty did make a V8 in period at the same time as a prototype engine, but it didn't perform very well and was no good to go in aeroplanes. It wasn't powerful enough, so they ended up going with the V12. So I'm going to use this V12 case, cut it in half, weld it back together, make a new crank, use all of the original barrels, rods, pistons, the top end, all of as many parts as I can from the original engine, and put them into our cut down case, making one of the only running Liberty V8 engines, I think, in the world. If you know of any more, let me know. It is going to be an epic project, and I can't wait to get stuck into it properly. With both rods now removed, you can see the big end bearing. It's slightly unusual looking because of the knife and fork rods, but it's there, it's complete, and it actually looks in really not too bad condition. There is a lot of grease and sludge in there, but once that's cleaned up, the actual bearing surface, amazingly, looks okay.
This is the perfect time to start a little time lapse, because I have got 6 nuts to remove per set of rods, and there's 12 rods, so there's 36, if my maths is correct, split pins to try and wiggle away and undo, and then nuts to free up and loosen, bearing caps to remove, and rods to take off. This little time lapse that you're watching in a few seconds was hours, a good couple of hours gone by, just very carefully, trying not to damage anything, bending, straightening, removing the split pins, freeing them up, trying not to move the rods too much because I'm expecting there to be rust inside and I don't want to drag it around and score anything. Trying my best to remove all of the split pins. Luckily, all of the nuts came off okay, fine. And then I'm basically lifting out the rods, which are knife and fork. If you're not familiar with this type of rod, it's sort of knife and fork. They sort of fit into each other and both share one journal on the crank. That way the pistons are exactly opposite each other as opposed to being staggered, which makes things, well, quite streamlined. I quite like it. It's a nice idea. It's very clever. There's a few engines that run like this. It's not that uncommon. But it does leave me with these very obscure, tricky bearings. If I need to replace them, I'm going to be making them. They seem to be made of bronze with like a white metal babbitt inside. So maybe you keep the bronze and just re-babbitt them. I'm not sure, but that's a problem for much later on. The job now is just to get all of the rods removed, the bearings removed, everything out off of the crank, so I can get the forklift back in and lift up the crank and get it out of the case, because there's also bearings in the case, which seem to be a similar construction, made with bronze and white metal. So I can basically get access to the bottom of this case and see what's happening in there. But I need to get this crank out the way, which is not ideal, having this flywheel on the end of it, which means, I don't know, it's just a heavy lump. To be fair, even without the flywheel, it is still a huge crank. But I'm very pleased to say all of the rods are coming out nicely. Nothing looks particularly damaged, which is really nice. They are all covered in surface rust and need a lot of cleaning up and polishing and finishing. But structurally, they all look okay. Nothing's obviously bent and damaged. There's not been any obvious major like engine failure or anything like that. Nothing's really badly damaged, which is good. Hopefully I can use this set of rods in the new engine. Finally, here's all the rods and bearings and nuts and bolts laid out on the bench, and that really just leaves one major component left in the bottom crankcase to remove, and that is the crank. So I've got a couple of straps that I tied around the journals, got the forklift back out, and I'm just going to very, very gently start sneaking it up, lifting it up. I wish I had an extra pair of hands doing stuff like this, because I just needed somebody to guide the crank whilst somebody was driving the forklift. But I'm on my own down here and I'm doing the best I can. So it's just going to take a bit longer, back and forwards, walking back and forwards, just making sure that nothing's binding up and I'm not damaging and forcing anything in the wrong way. I do want to be able to keep the bearings that are in the crankcase. I'd love to be able to reuse those and potentially re-white metal them if I have to. The crank, on the other hand, I'm not going to reuse. It will be very helpful for me to have as a reference to take measurements from, so I can recreate a new crank. But the V8 has a flat plane crank, so it's a different layout, and obviously it's much shorter. So that is going to have to be something that we get made completely from scratch. But this crank will be very, very helpful to take measurements from and use as a kind of a template, essentially. So I need to get it out in one piece and be very careful with it. Seeing it out of the engine dangling on a couple of straps like that it's such a huge thing. It really makes me appreciate how they made these things so long ago. So we'll see you soon. Another week has actually gone past. We've been down at the repair shop. It's been the Christmas special, so it's all been very festive. And that also means it's been extremely busy. I'm a little bit knackered. But it's Sunday morning, first thing in the morning, and I have come up to see Richard Towman to his workshop. He is the jewellery expert, goldsmith, I guess, on the repair shop. And he has got some fancy equipment, including a handheld metal analyzer. I've brought this precious small piece of the engine case, the only bit that I've got that I can actually sort of carry around sensibly, to Rich Towman's workshop, so we can zap this with his laser scanner and try and analyze it and get an idea of what this is actually made of. Because all of the, as I've been saying, all of the literature that I can find just says that the engine case is cast aluminium. If that's the case, brilliant, we can weld it, no problem. Tricky, but no problem. This really is make or break. If this turns out to have a high lead content or high zinc or some other strange metal in there, we're not going to be able to weld it, I know that. So we're not going to be able to cut it down. We'll have to think of plan B. I am nervous.
Dom.
There he is.
Welcome to the workshop. Come on in.
Thank you.
A lot smaller compared to yours, but...
Yeah, but at least you've got walls.
So you're hoping that there's not lead in this?
It's cast aluminium, from what I can tell from the literature. But with casting aluminium, tends to have silicon, possibly, to help it flow. Sometimes zinc, sometimes copper.
Okay.
Sometimes lead. I'm hoping there's no magnesium.
It will definitely, so the XRF isn't going to be able to pull out, detect the aluminium in it, because it's not designed to detect that, but it will definitely detect magnesium, it will definitely detect lead.
Copper?
Definitely copper, definitely zinc, because there's copper in gold alloys, so it will find that as well. I think the only aluminium is the only thing that it actually won't find, but that's fine because it will look for the other things.
Which is, we know there's aluminium.
Absolutely.
It's just what else is in there.
There's a regulation when using XRF instruments, is that if the piece that you're testing can fit within a protective cage, then you should. But it is a completely portable one that ultimately, I guess, could be taken down into mining situations and held up against the wall. But
oh, wow.
Just for safety's sake.
Because this has been down to the repair shop, hasn't
This
it?
has been down to the repair shop. Yep, this is. I use this regularly. But yeah, it's a handheld unit, but it works in conjunction with this. This cage.
because there's lasers going on, I guess, so we need to be careful.
X-rays.
Oh, it's X-rays, not a laser.
No, it's not a laser.
Okay. So like it's similar to when you'd X-ray your broken leg.
Absolutely.
Is it?
Yep. It's the same guidelines that we have to follow through the health and safety executives.
Do we have to stand out the room like the nurses do? When
No,
you press the button?
this is lead at the top here.
That's why you've got the box.
That is totally within there, and this won't work unless the lid is down.
I see.
So I'm going to take this aperture here. We've got probably about a 10mm aperture here with a little bit of film on it. I'm just going to put this sandpapered bit here, where just on top. Shut down the lid. So it's found copper for sure. It's found iron. It's found gallium. And it's found a bit of lead. So AG is silver. Fe is
Silver? Do you reckon that's just a bit of remnants from something you had on there before?
No, unlikely. It could just be naturally present. It's just tiny little items.
Does it tell you quantities?
Yeah. So 0.4%.
Okay, wow. So there's silver.
Yeah. I mean, it's 0.4. It is absolutely tiny. It could well even just be sort of like a residue thing. Fe is iron.
Iron, yeah.
Okay.
Familiar with that. So there's iron in it. Would you think there's iron? Maybe that's a bit of...
Well, it's 3%.
3%, yeah.
It's saying...
Is that zinc?
Yeah, zinc. Cu is copper and Pb is lead.
Whoa,
Now,
there's a lot of copper.
there is a lot of copper, but the thing is, it's not saying that 94% of that item is copper. It's saying 94% of what it's found is copper. That probably, then, is not giving us an exceptionally accurate, so it probably isn't 0.4% of silver. It's probably a lot less, but it's taking what it's found.
Just because the main body of metal is aluminium.
It's aluminium.
But it doesn't know.
Yeah, and it can't find that because aluminium, of course, is an element in its own right.
Yes.
So it would find that.
Yeah.
It would find that as.
But your machine clearly does jewelry.
Yeah,
You've set it up for jewelry.
Jewelry or related items. So for me, it's very, very handy to find lead because we can't repair jewellery with a gas flame if it's ever been in contact with lead solder because it will act like it will melt and it will suck away at the metal. It's just terrible. So I want it to find lead. I would probably say, without being an engine block expert, that the amount of lead that's in there is insignificant.
Copper, I think we're okay with. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Zinc is an issue.
Again, quite a small amount. I think it might be prudent to just to just keep testing in other areas as well.
Go on, yeah, we can scuff a bit up and have a look.
Just taking a bit of 240 grit sandpaper, and that's the coarsest of the sandpaper we use. I'm not going to use any of my files to do this because that will cross-contaminate. And see on my files here, there's all bits of gold.
In the file, my
in
God.
The file, yeah. When metals are melted, you get different levels. So like the crust of a piece of metal, when I melt it of gold, if it's got like any nickel or zinc in it, that will rise to the top in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
The crust of it. That now has gone beneath the surface. So that's the part now that I want to get the aperture on to have another look. The longer I leave this on, the more it's going to sniff deep into it. You see? Oh, there, it's found some lead. But look how little.
AG.
Silver.
AG silver, GA,
Gallium.
and then iron, zinc,
Fe.
copper.
Gallium's
lead.
in a lot of things. Gallium's a metal that actually melts in the palm of your hand.
Whoa. So that's just been in some warm water?
Boiling water, so that's gallium. That's the melt. It's melted now.
No way.
That's just been in boiling water. There we go.
And that will go hard as that cools, but you're like, what? The temperature of your body
Yeah, the
will melt it.
temperature of your body will keep it molten. It's not quite as low a melting temperature as mercury, but I think it must be one of the others, and that is totally a metal. Oh, there you go. Just falling on there. It's all right because I just pick it up. That will just cool instantly. Look at that. Look, there you go. Oh, no, it's still molten. Look. My understanding of making alloys is just adding the tiniest amount of metal just makes something behave completely differently, like brass, copper and zinc, and it just makes a whole new metal.
Right. So a tiny dash of gallium.
Tiny dash of something else.
That concludes our little test. No magnesium.
No magnesium.
A lot of copper.
Absolutely.
And
Quite a lot of aluminium, I'm assuming.
We hope it's aluminium, but we can't test that. And not a lot of anything else.
No, not a lot at all.
Which all sounds very positive for being able to weld it. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is clean this piece up, clean up the engine case, and try and weld that back onto the engine case. See how that goes.
I'll be thinking of you, that's for sure.
Yeah. Rich, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
I have to say a huge thank you to Rich T for doing that for me with his X-ray machine. Not lasers, X-rays. So I am going to take my little piece of engine block back to the barn. I've got a week down at the repair shop and then I'm back home. But that analysis is enough for me to try and commit and try and weld on this engine case. A big thank you for watching today's episode, and a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring today's episode. Get 60% off your annual plan by using code Chinea at the checkout, or go to incogni.com/Chinea. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.